They say you can't go home again. They're wrong. You can. You just shouldn't. The house on Willow Lane doesn't hold my childhood. It holds the ghost of the girl I was before I learned that family isn't a sanctuary. It's a crime scene, and I've been summoned back to view the body. The call came on a Tuesday. My father's voice, a dry rustle I hadn't heard in 5 years, held no greeting. Lena, your mother's sick. It's time. For words that were both an order and an indictment. It's time. Time for what? To forgive. To forget. To play the prodigal daughter for the sake of appearances in our picturesque Poison Ivy town? My name is Lena Vance, and I built a life 2,000 miles away on a foundation of clean lines, quiet rooms, and controlled outcomes. I am a master restorer of antique paintings, professionally trained to uncover truths hidden under layers of grime and varnish. I never wanted to turn that skill on my own past. The flight back was a study in tension. Every mile forward felt like a year backward. I rented a car at the airport, the familiar humid air clinging to me like an unwanted shroud. Driving into Silverwood was like watching a film reel of my own anxiety. The manicured lawns, the white picket fences, the massive, ancient willow trees that gave the town its name. It was all a beautifully maintained facade. My family's home, a proud Victorian at the end of Willow Lane, was the crown jewel of the charade. My mother, Vivian, was in the garden. That was my first shock. The woman who was sick was on her knees, digging in the peonies with fierce, gloved hands. She didn't look ill. She looked furious. She stood as I approached, wiping her hands on her apron, leaving streaks of dark soil. Her eyes, the same sharp green as mine, scanned me, my tailored trousers, my simple linen shirt, the absence of a wedding ring. "You're thinner," she declared, a greeting that was really a critique. City life must be so nourishing. Inside, the house was a museum of our estrangement. The same heavy furniture, the same scent of lemon polish and underlying damp. My father, Charles, was in his study, a glass of amber liquid already in his hand at 3 in the afternoon. He offered a stiff nod. "Lena, you look well." The pause was a canyon. We didn't embrace. In our family, touch was either a weapon or a transaction. The performance began over a painfully quiet dinner. The questions were barbs wrapped in silk. How was work? Meaning, is your little hobby profitable yet? Seeing anyone special? Meaning, why are you still alone? How long can you stay? Meaning, don't stay long. I answered in monosyllables, my appetite gone. The sickness, it turned out, was nerves, exhaustion, a foggy mind. No diagnosis, just a pervasive sense of blame that hung over the table like a chandelier waiting to fall. That night, in my old room, now a sterile guest room stripped of all my teenage relics, I couldn't sleep. The silence of the house was a lie. It was full of old screams, swallowed arguments, the echo of a slamming door that had been my exit 5 years ago. The fight had been about my brother, Jamie. Always about Jamie. The golden child who could do no wrong, until he did the unthinkable. Driven by a restorer's itch, a need to find the original sketch beneath the finished painting, I went downstairs. In my father's study, the air thick with the ghost of cigars, I didn't look for answers in his ledgers. I looked for them in the one place he'd never think to secure, my mother's sitting room. In the bottom drawer of her writing desk, under bundles of old birthday cards saved for show, I found a file. Not medical records. Legal documents. A finalized, quiet deed of transfer, dated 8 months ago. The family's prized lakeside cottage. The place Jamie and I loved, the place we were all happiest, signed over solely to Jamie. And beneath that, a single recent bank statement for an account I'd never seen. Regular, sizable deposits from a company named Viridian Holdings. The last transaction was a wire transfer out, for an even larger sum, to a medical institution in Switzerland. Not a hospital. A private, discreet clinic specializing in long-term, residential care and psychiatric support. My blood went cold. The sickness wasn't here. It was there. They had sent her away. My mother, Vivian Vance, the formidable queen of Silverwood society, had been institutionalized. And the mother in the garden, the one who criticized my weight, she was an imposter. This woman was an actress, a stand-in. My father had hired her to maintain the illusion, to keep the family's perfect image intact while the real Vivian was, what? Silenced. Drugged. What truth had she threatened to tell? The rage was a white, clean flame. They lied about a sickness to get me home. They were living a lie to keep the town fooled. And Jamie. Jamie had been paid off with the cottage to keep his complicity. I heard a floorboard creak in the hall. I slid the file back, my heart hammering against my ribs. The facade of this house, this family, was more cracked and rotten than any painting I'd ever restored. I came here thinking I was facing a difficult reconciliation. I was wrong. I was standing in the middle of a cover-up, and the only person who might know the full, terrifying truth was the one they'd locked away across an ocean. My family didn't need a restorer. They needed an excavation, and I was just naive enough to start digging. The quiet of a library is for study. The quiet of my family's home was for hiding screams. I had the first piece of the puzzle. A mother in exile, a father's lie, a brother bought off with a cottage. Now I needed the why, and I knew the lock to pick was my brother Jamie. The golden child had always been the keeper of my father's softer glances, and maybe his softer secrets. Confronting Jamie directly would be a mistake. He'd run to my father, and whatever fragile evidence existed would vanish. I needed to see the cottage, the price of his silence. The next morning, I announced I was going for a drive to clear my head. My mother's face tightened, but she said nothing. My father merely grunted from behind his newspaper, a fortress of implied disapproval. The lake road was a ribbon of memory. Jamie and I chasing fireflies, the taste of stolen lemonade, the feeling of sun-warmed wood under our feet. The cottage appeared just as beautiful, but now it felt like a tombstone for our childhood. A new SUV was in the drive. As I parked, Jamie stepped onto the porch. He looked older, wearier than his years should allow, holding a coffee mug like a shield. "Lena." He didn't smile. "He said you'd come snooping." "Hello, Jamie." I kept my voice light, climbing the steps. "Just wanted to see the old place." "It looks good. You look settled." He snorted, a hollow sound. "Cut the crap. You saw the deed. You think I'm the villain here." "I think you were given a very nice lake house to play along," I said, leaning against the railing, looking at the water, not at him. "What did you have to give up for it? Your signature? Your silence? Our actual mother?" He flinched as if struck. The anger drained from his face, replaced by something worse, profound fear. "You don't understand what it was like here after you left." She started saying things. Dangerous things. About the business, about Viridian Holdings. Dad said she was having a breakdown, that she was a threat to herself and the family's stability. The clinic in Switzerland was for her own good. A reset. A reset. I repeated, the words tasting like ash. And the woman in the house? A companion. A nurse, really. To help Dad through the stress. He recited it like a line he'd been forced to memorize. "Look at me, Jamie." He finally met my eyes, and I saw the little boy who used to be my ally, terrified and trapped. "Do you believe that? Do you believe our mother, the most stubborn, proud, clear-minded woman we know, just conveniently lost her mind right when she started saying things about Dad's business?" His silence was the loudest confession. His gaze dropped to his coffee. "The deposits from Viridian, they weren't for the clinic. They were for me. A consulting fee. To help with the transition. A bribe. My father was laundering hush money through a corporate entity to pay off his son. The cold, logical horror of it stole my breath. This wasn't a family tragedy. It was a corporate takeover of a human life. "Jamie," I said, my voice barely a whisper. What was she saying? What was so dangerous? He shook his head, a frantic movement. "I don't know specifics. Something about the old mill property, the environmental reports. That people in town were getting sick. She was going to the press. He couldn't let that happen. The scandal would have destroyed everything. The old Vance mill. Closed for a decade, a rusting eyesore on the north end of town. I remembered talk, years ago, about Dad selling the land to Viridian for redevelopment. It had been his crowning achievement, a final, massive payout. I left Jamie on the porch, a guilty man in his gilded cage. My next stop was the Silverwood Public Library. In the microfilm archives of the local paper, I found it. Not a scandal, but a quiet, buried notice from 8 years ago. Vance family's mill property acquired by Viridian Holdings for future green development. A follow-up piece 6 months later, a small column on page 6. Remediation delays at mill site cited. Remediation. The cleanup of toxic waste. Using a library computer, I searched deeper, bypassing local archives for state environmental filings. It took an hour, but I found it. A violation notice issued to Viridian Holdings 2 years after the purchase. contaminants in the soil and groundwater exceeding safe levels. A proposed cleanup plan was filed. Then the record went dead. No follow-up, no completion certificate. The case was marked, administratively closed. My mother must have found out. She must have realized my father had sold a poisoned asset, covered up the violation, and let the town live on top of it. She was going to blow the whistle. And for that, they erased her. I drove back to Willow Lane, the picturesque town now looking like a painted set over a poison well. My father was waiting in his study. The actress was nowhere to be seen. "You've been busy," he said, not looking up from his desk. "Stirring up your brother. Digging in the past." "The past is leaching into the town's water, Dad," I said, my voice steady with a new, icy certainty. "You sold them a lie with the mill. Mom found out. Where is she really? What did you do to her?" He finally looked at me, and his eyes held no fatherly warmth, only the cold calculation of a CEO assessing liability. "She is receiving the care she desperately needs. You are distressed. The city, your solitary life, it's made you paranoid. You're seeing conspiracies in family difficulties." It was the same gaslighting, the same tactic he must have used on her. But I wasn't a young girl anymore, and I wasn't his employee. I was a restorer of truth. "I'm going to find her," I said simply. "And I'm going to find the proof you buried with that mill. You had two choices. Clean up your mess or silence your wife. You chose wrong." A muscle twitched in his jaw. "Leave it, Lena. Walk away. I will make it worth your while. A gallery of your own. Name your price." There it was. My price. Just like Jamie's cottage. He thought every soul had a tag. He thought my silence was for sale. He was wrong. My mother's voice was the masterpiece they tried to destroy under layers of lies and money. And I am the restorer. I will cross an ocean to find the original, and I will scrape away every last bit of their filth until the whole ugly picture is revealed for this town, and for the world to see. Switzerland wasn't a postcard. It was a mausoleum for the living. The clinic, Sunhold, perched in cruel irony on a sunny Alpine slope, was a prison dressed in beige carpets and soothing watercolors. My revenge wouldn't be a headline yet. First, it had to be a key. I was here to unlock a ghost and turn her back into a woman. Gaining access required a different lie. At the front desk, I was no longer Lena Vance, the disowned daughter. I was Lena Vance, a niece from America, here for a prearranged genealogical visit. A story I'd woven with fake IDs and a routed phone call to a confused but paid-off junior staffer. The administrator, a man with a smile as warm as a spreadsheet, reviewed my forged paperwork. "Frau Vance has had a difficult adjustment. She is fragile." 15 minutes. They led me to a sunroom, and there she was, my mother, Vivian. She sat by a window, staring at a mountain she could not touch. She was thinner, her famous green eyes dulled by medication, her hands lying still in her lap instead of commanding a room. A profound, silent rage crystallized inside me, colder and harder than any Alpine peak. "Mom," I whispered. She turned. The recognition was slow, like a light rising from a deep, dark well. Then it flooded her face, not joy but panic. Her eyes darted to the orderly by the door. "No," she mouthed silently, shaking her head. A warning. I sat beside her, taking her hand. It felt like holding a fallen bird. "I'm not here because of him," I said, my voice low and steady. "I'm here because of the mill, because of Viridian, because I found the files." At the word mill, her fingers tightened around mine with a strength I thought was gone. A tear tracked through the careful powder on her cheek. "The water," she breathed, the words a dry rustle. "The children on Oak Lane. The sickness." He said I was mad. They all said it. "Tell me," I urged. "Tell me everything. I have a recorder in my pocket. Tell me, and I will get you out." And she did. In halting, then frantic whispers, she spilled the truth my father had paid millions to bury. The original environmental report Viridian gave the town was a forgery. The real data, which she'd found in my father's home office, showed carcinogenic levels of industrial solvents leaching into the aquifer. She'd confronted him. He'd offered her a choice: a dignified retirement abroad with a generous allowance, or a public battle where he would use every resource to have her declared mentally incompetent. She'd chosen to fight, so he made the choice for her. A private doctor, paid by Viridian, signed the commitment papers. Jamie was bought with the cottage to corroborate the story of her psychotic break. They had flown her here in the night, and for 11 months, they had been medicating her sanity into silence. I captured it all, every name, every date, every threat. It was the human testimony that would give life to the dry environmental violations. Before I left, I pressed a new untraceable phone into her hands, its single number pre-programmed. Keep this hidden. I will call this number in 72 hours. Be ready to answer. Back in Silverwood, I moved from excavation to demolition. I didn't go home. I went to a lawyer. Not a local one, but a fierce environmental litigator from the city, whose reputation for ruthlessness matched my father's. I gave her everything. The recordings, the falsified reports, the financial links between Viridian and the clinic, the transfer deed to Jamie. The final piece was the town itself. From an anonymous email account, I sent the raw environmental data and a transcript of my mother's testimony to every member of the town council, the local newspaper editor, and the parents' association at the school near the old mill. The subject line: "Why your children are sick, the Vance/Viridian cover-up." The silence broke with a cacophony. It wasn't a trickle. It was a dam burst. The local news led with it. Protest signs appeared on manicured lawns. The state environmental agency announced an urgent investigation. My father's house on Willow Lane became a fortress under siege by news vans and angry neighbors. I confronted him for the last time in his study, now a bunker. He looked shattered, the powerful facade finally cracked. "You've destroyed us," he spat, his voice hollow. "No," I said, calm as the eye of the storm I had created. "You did that when you buried the truth and your wife to save your fortune. I just turned on the lights so everyone could see the rot." Jamie found me packing my rental car. His guilt had curdled into despair. "What do I do?" he asked, a lost little boy. "You get a lawyer. You testify about the coercion. And you give the cottage back to the family trust to be sold, with every penny going to a fund for the medical bills of the families on Oak Lane." It wasn't forgiveness. It was a sentence. He nodded, weeping, and I knew he would do it. 72 hours later, I called the number. My mother answered on the first ring. "The papers are filed," I told her. "The story is public. Your doctor here has been served with a subpoena and is already talking to save himself. A car is coming for you. It will bring you to me." I met her at the airport in the city where I lived. She stepped off the plane, no longer the ghost in a beige room, but a woman wrapped in a coat I'd sent, her back straight, her green eyes clear and burning with a hard-won fire. We didn't embrace. We looked at each other, two survivors of the same shipwreck, standing on new, solid ground. My revenge was not a prison sentence for my father, though that may still come. It was a restoration. I scraped away the glossy varnish of family and legacy to reveal the toxic masterpiece beneath. I returned a stolen voice to its owner, and I learned that the most powerful vengeance is not ruin, but the truth, spoken aloud in the town square of the life you were supposed to live.